Howdy folks, welcome back to Duke Frazier Productions. We got something a little bit different today. In today's video, we're going to talk about my top 5 books that are related to Cap and Ball revolvers. Stay tuned. Spinning it. That black powder smoke don't taste so good. Alright folks, so as we said in today's video, we're going to be discussing my top 5 favorite books that have some pertinence to Cap and Ball revolvers. Now some of these are technical books, some of them are history books, and one of them is kind of a mix of both. And actually there's 6 books here, but we're going to get into why I've got 6 here in a quick second. So number 5, my favorite top 5 books is Elmer Keith's Six Guns. So this book has a really good general overlook of revolvers throughout history and some modern stuff. And it goes over just about everything you can think of. Goes over the history of the six gun, talks about the Pattersons and the Walkers and all the other six guns. It's a good general book. Teaches you about shooting, about sights, long range shooting with them, goes over hunting, double actions, black powder, bullets. So this is just a good general book. And you can find these on Amazon for a fairly decent price, and from what I understand, they are still in print. So this is my number 5. And if you're going to get into revolver shooting of any kind, I highly recommend this one. So the next one on the list is actually the double book, and there's a reason for that. And this doesn't pertain so much to the gun in particular as it does to the people that used it. So the book is the memoirs of Colonel John Singleton Mosby. Now, if you're not familiar with Mosby, John Mosby was a Confederate partisan ranger, so basically a guerrilla fighter. But he was one of the few units, if not the only unit, the actions were condoned by the Confederate States of America. Because a lot of the other Ranger units, they just were basically land pirates, and they went out and did whatever they wanted to. And they did some things that weren't so good. You get into Missouri, you have the guerrillas that go into Lawrence, Kansas, and they raise all kinds of hell. But Mosby's men, they plagued the Union Army all over northern Virginia. They snuck behind enemy lines. They captured enemy commander, which if you haven't read that story, you should look it up, because it is hilarious of how Mosby captured that one. And the extra book that comes with that, and I consider it a supplement, and it is an excellent supplement, it goes into very good detail, is this book, Mosbys Rangers. So these two together are my number 4 choice with this as a supplement, and this goes into a lot of depth. This is an excellent book, and I haven't made it all the way through. I've skimmed through doing some research parts. One of these days I'm going to sit down and read the whole thing cover to cover, but this, from what I've read of it, is an excellent book. So the next one that comes up is another one that deals more with the people that use the Colt guns than the Colt guns themselves, but you get a lot of information about the guns and where they were at. And that one is Texas Ranger Jack Hayes on the Frontier Southwest. So this book is about Jack Hayes. Captain Jack Hayes is the Texas Rangers, and his exploits as a Texas Ranger, and also during the Mexican War when he was the colonel of the Texas Mounted Volunteer Riflemen. I believe I got that right. But basically, this tracks the action of the Texas Rangers. So it talks about when they get the Pattersons, how they use the Pattersons, where they use the Pattersons as Rangers, leading up in the 1840s up to the Mexican War. And then it gets into the Mexican War, and it talks about when they are issued the Walker revolvers and how effective they were at using them against enemy combatants and also enemy non-combatants. I gotta say, from reading this book, you'll learn that the Texas Rangers are not a group of men to mess with. And they are a very vengeful group because when they get down into Mexico during the Mexico War, they raise a lot of hell. The Mexicans during the Mexican War referred to the Texas Rangers as the Devil Texans because they knew how to fight. They didn't put up with any crap, to basically put it bluntly. And there's one story in there of a ranger who had his handkerchief stolen, and the would-be thief was running away with said ranger's handkerchief, and the ranger pulled his walker and shot the guy, went over, picked up his handkerchief, and went about his business. They were definitely tough men, not men that had any time for the BS. So this is my number 3 book. Excellent book, not expensive. You can get it for $20 over there on Amazon. I highly recommend it if you have any interest in the early history of the Texas Rangers, or if you have the interest in the Walker or the Patterson revolvers. Because if it wasn't for these guys, neither one of those guns would have gained any fame. So the next one coming up is another history book, and this one does detail a lot about a particular gun. This just talks about one particular year in United States history during the Mexican War, and it is focused on the Walker revolver, and that is Sam Colt's own record. And this is chock full of information. Now, what this book is a correspondence of all the known letters at the time between Samuel Colt and anybody that had anything to do with the development of the Walker revolver. So it starts out when Sam Colt is corresponding with Samuel Walker about the development of the Walker revolver, and it goes right on through until Samuel Colt picks up his stuff in late 1847 and moves to his new factory, because he was actually producing these at Whitneyville. He didn't have his own factory at the time he started production. And there is a lot of information. You just have to know how to read and look for it and interpret it. And it talks about how the Walker nipple wrench was derived. So if you've looked around on the internet, you might have seen these tools called Walker nipple wrenches that have kind of a question mark shape. And you're wondering, why do they have that shape? Well, that's because that question mark part is the mainspring vise. That's how you capture the mainspring to disassemble the gun. And it talks about that in there. It also talks about how the Walker actually started out looking very much like the Patterson with a separate loading lever, and then they developed it with the loading lever attached to the barrel. Lots of great information. If you're interested in the history of the Walker, I highly recommend this. This is another, it's a more rare book, but they usually go for about $20 on Amazon, I think is what I paid for this one. And I have highlighted it up. I've taken notes in it, and this is just an excellent, excellent piece of history. So my number 1 book that I've got pertaining to guns is a more rare book. If you're lucky like I am, occasionally you can find them for like 10 or 12 bucks. This particular one I found for 10 bucks on Amazon with free shipping. Some of the better copies, the pristine copies, are going in the $100 to $150 range. But I've always had pretty good luck on Amazon buying used, good condition books. Usually when they come in, there's a few minor things with them, but they're still readable. They still got the information in them. And you're going to find, as I have found, that if you're into the black powder Colt revolvers or any Colt guns, that this is going to become your Bible, basically. And unfortunately, it's not in production anymore. But it is a history of the Colt revolver and other firearms made by Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company from 1836 to 1940. And it is written by Charles T. Haven and Frank A. Belden. This book is 700 pages of nothing to do but Colt guns. Mostly handguns. They do a little bit in rifles, but this is mostly focused on handguns. And it is a wealth of information, and it's too bad these things aren't in production anymore. But it shows some pictures of some really, really rare Colts, some early prototypes that are currently on display in some museums, such as this Patterson prototype, which is really weird looking. But this thing is just awesome, and it goes over everything. And it even has, if I can find the section, it has letters written on the Walker, so it has some stuff that's not in Samuel Colt's 1847 book on the Walker. It has a few letters that are missing from that one. It has ordnance reports. It has advertisements. It has military reports from combat, such as on this page. This one is talking about Samuel Walker's camp down at Lagoon, Enon, Pelon. On the 28th of April, they were attacked by an overwhelming force of enemy, and they lost some of their items. And one of the items they lost was 12 Colt's pistols, so they lost 12 of them. And this was in 46, so this would have been Patterson revolvers. So it has a lot of information in there. This was a well thought out, well put together book, and if you can get your hands on it, I highly recommend it. This thing is just absolutely awesome. And if you're like me, you're into the history stuff, the books, like the guns, are worth their weight in gold. Because the gun, it's fun to shoot, it's fun to plink with, but without the story there, if you're a history person like I am, without the story, it really doesn't mean all that much. But this, like I said, I can't say good enough about it. This is an awesome book, and I wish it was still in production. Unfortunately, it's not, but you still can get your hands on them, and you still can find them for a reasonable price. All right, folks, so that's going to take care of it today for my top 5 favorite books on relating to black powder guns. If you liked what you've seen on the channel thus far, be sure to hit that subscribe button down there below. Don't forget to check us out over there on the social media, Facebook, Patreon, Instagram. Links to all that is down there in the description box. And remember, stay tuned and keep your powder dry.